Welcome to Karen Stories, where the wildest Karen encounters unfold. Get ready for hilarious, unbelievable, and shocking moments as Karens make the most outrageous demands. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to never miss a crazy story. Let's dive in. I should have known something was wrong the moment I saw her standing at my gate, arms crossed, tapping one manicured nail against her elbow like she was a queen waiting for a peasant to kneel. I'd dealt with my fair share of nosy neighbors before, but this one radiated a level of entitlement so strong I could practically see the invisible crown sitting atop her perfectly styled blonde bob. She wasn't here for a friendly chat. No, I could tell by the sharp squint of her eyes, the purse of her lips, the impatient huff she let out when I didn't immediately rush to greet her. HOA types always had a way about them, the belief that they ruled whatever land their gaze happened to fall upon, as if personal property laws bent to their whims. But this was my land, my farm, my rules, and she was about to find out just how little her opinion mattered here. I wiped the sweat from my brow, the midday heat bearing down like a furnace, and strolled over, already dreading whatever nonsense was about to spill from her lips. "You there?" "Yes, you," she called, as if I were an employee rather than the sole owner of the land she was trespassing on. "We need to talk." I raised an eyebrow. "Do we?" She ignored my sarcasm and gestured toward the large wooden sign nailed to my gate, the one that clearly stated, "Private property, no trespassing," in bold, unmissable letters. "This," she sniffed, "is very misleading." I blinked. "Misleading? It says private property." "Yes, but it gives the impression that people aren't welcome here." "That's because they're not?" She gasped as if I'd just told her I punt kittens for fun. "That attitude is exactly why we have rules in this neighborhood. It's incredibly unneighborly to put up barriers like this. This is a community, and communities share." I folded my arms. "MAAM, I don't know what kind of HOA fever dream you're living in, but this farm isn't part of any community association. It's private land, bought and paid for." Her eyes widened in theatrical horror, hands flying to her chest as if I'd personally attacked her with my words. "Oh, but you are part of the community. Just because your land sits slightly beyond the HOA jurisdiction doesn't mean you should act like some kind of rogue outsider. We have standards." I took a deep, calming breath. "And what, exactly, do these standards have to do with me?" Her expression shifted from faux concern to barely restrained irritation. "Well, for one, people have been asking about your farm. You have such lovely open fields, and yet you keep them all locked away. It's quite selfish, really. My grandson and his friends would love to explore the land, maybe have a little picnic. Children need space to run free, you know." I stared at her, stunned into silence for a few precious moments, trying to process the sheer audacity of what she had just said. She was standing on my property, in front of a very clear no trespassing sign, and was complaining that I wasn't allowing random children, no less, to just roam freely on my land like it was some public park. "Ma'am, I don't know you. I don't know your grandson. Why would I let strangers onto my property?" She scoffed. "Oh, don't be dramatic. It's just a farm. It's not like I'm asking to move in. We're talking about community spirit here. It's frankly quite rude that you're hoarding all this land to yourself." I felt my jaw clench. "It's not hoarding, it's ownership. That's how property works." Her smile tightened, her eyes narrowing to slits. "So, you're refusing to be reasonable?" "I'm refusing to let random people trespass." Her voice sharpened. "I'll have you know that I'm the president of the HOA, and I have a say in what goes on in this area." I smirked. "Well, lucky for me, this farm isn't under HOA control." Her lips thinned into a hard line. That's not the point. The principle of the matter is that you are living among us, and therefore you should adhere to the standards we uphold." I tilted my head. "The standards that apply to HOA properties, which mine is not." A twitch developed at the corner of her mouth. She knew she had no legal ground here, but she wasn't about to let that stop her. "Well, it's awfully inconvenient to have a property like yours just locked up." "What kind of neighbor does that?" "One who likes his privacy." She inhaled sharply. "Selfish." I shrugged. "Sensible." She stared at me for a long moment, face twitching between righteous anger and forced composure, before finally exhaling through her nose. "Very well," she said, voice dripping with fake civility. "If that's how you want to play it." And with that, she turned on her heel and stomped off down my driveway. Something told me this wasn't over. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of voices outside my gate. Not just one voice, but many. The kind of low, murmuring hum that sets every instinct in your body on high alert. I threw on a shirt and stomped to the front door, already feeling my patience wearing thin. Sure enough, there she was, the self-proclaimed queen of the HOA, standing just outside my gate, flanked by a small squad of equally smug-looking suburbanites. They were all dressed in their finest casual power outfits, pressed khakis, polo shirts, and, in her case, an aggressively floral blouse that looked like it had been ripped straight from a 90s couch. And then, I saw the clipboard. A clipboard. That was never a good sign. "Good morning," she trilled, like we were old friends and not two people on the verge of a property rights war. "I see you're an early riser. That's wonderful. Just wonderful." I folded my arms. "What do you want?" Her plastic smile didn't waver, but her grip on the clipboard tightened. "We, as concerned members of the community, have gathered to discuss the issue of your property's accessibility. It has come to our attention that your farm, while technically outside HOA jurisdiction, is still affecting the neighborhood. Let me guess," I said dryly. "You and your little committee here have decided my land is too private for your taste?" A murmur of agreement rippled through the group. One of the men, a wiry guy with glasses, nodded vigorously. "It's a bit of an eyesore, don't you think?" I raised an eyebrow, glancing at my farm. My land was immaculate: rows of healthy crops, a neatly kept barn, a well-maintained gravel driveway. Meanwhile, the first seen some of their property's unmowed lawns, cracked driveways, and those tacky inflatable holiday decorations that lingered months past their expiration date. And they had the nerve to call my farm an eyesore? "I think my farm looks just fine." The HOA queen stepped forward, resting the clipboard against her hip like she was about to deliver a decree. "Well, the concern isn't just about appearance, you see. It's about community use. We strongly believe that in order to promote a harmonious neighborhood, all residents regardless of official HOA status should contribute to the common good." I sighed. "Let me guess. You want to use my farm?" Her eyes lit up, as if I had just given her permission instead of calling her out. "Oh, not use," she corrected, with a condescending little chuckle. "Just allow access. A small section for community gardens, maybe a trail for walkers, a little recreational area. It would be a huge benefit to the neighborhood." I stared at her, waiting for the punchline. Surely, she couldn't be serious. She didn't blink. "Oh, I get it now," I said, shaking my head. "You think you can just show up here with your little clipboard and declare that my private property belongs to the community? Well," she hedged, looking around at her group for support, "it should belong to the community. I mean, you have so much space. It's wasteful to keep it all to yourself." My blood pressure spiked. "Wasteful?" I repeated, my voice dangerously calm. "I work this land. I maintain this land. I own this land. Just because I have more of it than you doesn't mean you get to claim a piece." She tutted. "Tut Ted. Like I was a wayward child refusing to share my toys. There's no need to be so defensive. We're offering you a wonderful opportunity to integrate into the neighborhood. And we can help with the paperwork to ensure your land is recognized under HOA guidelines. That way, you can contribute just like everyone else." That's when I understood. This wasn't just about using my farm. This was about taking it over. My land wasn't part of the HOA, and that bothered her. She couldn't control it, couldn't micromanage it, couldn't slap arbitrary fees on it, or use it for her pet projects. And that drove her absolutely insane. So, she was trying to rope me in, trying to pressure me into voluntarily submitting to HOA control under the guise of community engagement. I let out a slow breath. "No." Her smile faltered. I'm sorry, no," I repeated louder this time. "I'm not joining the HOA. I'm not opening my farm for public use. And I'm definitely not letting you or anyone else waltz in here and tell me what to do with my own property." Her mouth tightened, eyes narrowing into slits. The people behind her shifted uncomfortably, sensing the shift in the air. "I see," she said coldly, hugging the clipboard to her chest. "That's very disappointing." I shrugged. "Life's full of disappointments." She exhaled sharply through her nose, then turned to her group. "Well, if he refuses to cooperate, I suppose we'll have to escalate things." "Escalate?" The little group nodded in agreement, already murmuring about alternatives and next steps. I took a step forward. "If you or anyone from your committee sets foot on my land without permission, I will personally escort you off the premises, and not politely." The queen gave me a sickly sweet smile. "Oh, don't be dramatic. We're just looking out for the community." I held her gaze, my patience long gone. "And I'm looking out for my land. Try anything, and we'll see who the authorities side with." Her smile twisted into something ugly. "We'll see." With that, she turned on her heel and marched off, her posse trailing behind her like a flock of overgrown geese. I watched them go, a sinking feeling settling in my gut. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I should have known she wouldn't let it go. The way she had walked away from my property, The way her little squad of suburban stormtroopers had murmured amongst themselves, it all reeked of unfinished business. And sure enough, barely 2 days later, she came back. Only this time, she wasn't alone. It was early in the afternoon, when I heard the rumble of an engine outside my gate. I glanced up from where I was working near the barn, expecting maybe a delivery truck or one of my usual suppliers. But no. It was her. And this time, she'd brought backup. A white municipal truck idled behind her obnoxiously clean SUV. The side of the truck bore the logo of the local zoning and planning department. And standing beside, it was a man in a neatly pressed polo shirt, clipboard in hand, eyes scanning my property like he was already writing up a violation. Oh, for F. I wiped my hands on my jeans and made my way toward the gate, already feeling the familiar irritation bubbling under my skin. "Good afternoon," she chirped, flashing me a smile so fake it should have come with a barcode. "I was just speaking with our lovely city inspector here, and we both noticed some concerns about your property." The zoning officer, let's call him Steve, because he looked like a Steve, gave me a tight-lipped nod, flipping through his clipboard. "We received a complaint about unapproved land use and potential zoning violations." I exhaled sharply, barely managing to keep my expression neutral. So that was her game. "You've got to be kidding me," I muttered, rubbing a hand over my face. "Oh, I assure you, this is quite serious." HOA Queen cut in, her voice dripping with insincere sympathy. "We wouldn't want any illegal structures or environmental hazards causing trouble for the community. Now would we?" I leveled her with a look. "This farm has been here for years. Before you even moved into your little cul-de-sac of dictatorship." She gasped, clutching her pearls like I'd just slapped her with a sack of manure. "There is no need to be rude. We're simply ensuring that our neighborhood maintains the proper standards of living." Steve cleared his throat, looking at me like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Sir, I'll need to take a look at your property to ensure everything is up to code." I crossed my arms. "Do you have a warrant?" That made him pause. His clipboard lowered slightly. "Well, no. But under city ordinances, no warrant, no inspection," I interrupted, my voice firm. "I know my rights. If you want to check anything on my property, you better come back with the proper paperwork." Steve hesitated. He knew I was right. But he also knew he'd been dragged into something that went beyond his pay grade. HOA Queen, however, was not nearly as reasonable. "Oh, don't be ridiculous. Just let him do his job. If you have nothing to hide, this shouldn't be an issue." I barked out a laugh. "That's funny, coming from the person who made up the complaint in the first place." Her lips pressed into a thin line, but she recovered quickly, plastering on another smug grin. "Oh, I didn't make up anything. I simply raised concerns. And, well," she gestured around dramatically, "when a property is this large, who knows what could be happening here." Steve sighed, clearly not enjoying being used as her personal attack dog. "Look, I'll just make a note that you refused inspection, but if there's a follow-up complaint, the city will be required to investigate." I nodded. "Great. Then you can tell your boss that this is harassment." Steve gave me an almost apologetic look before walking back toward his truck. "But HOA Queen?" Oh, she wasn't done yet. She turned back to me, voice dropping into something low and sickly sweet. "You do realize that fighting the HOA is a losing battle, right? We always find a way." I took a step closer to the gate, lowering my voice to match hers. "You do realize that trespassing on private property is a crime, right? And that making false complaints is misuse of city resources?" For the first time, I saw something flicker behind her eyes. Uncertainty. Maybe even fear. But it vanished in an instant, replaced with a haughty sniff. "I was just trying to help." I smiled. So was I. And then I pulled out my phone and snapped a picture of her and Steve standing by the truck. Her face went pale. "What were you doing?" she stammered, stepping back instinctively. "Oh, just taking a little evidence," I said easily. "For when I file my own complaint." "You wouldn't dare." I grinned wider. "Try me." For a moment, I thought she might actually explode right then and there. Her hands clenched into fists, her nostrils flared, and her lips curled like she had just sucked on a lemon. But then, with a final huff, she spun on her heel and stomped back to her car. "This isn't over," she hissed, slamming her door shut. I gave her a cheerful wave. "Looking forward to round two." She peeled out of my driveway, tires kicking up gravel, and I exhaled, shaking my head. I had a feeling this was just the beginning. I had barely let my guard down when it happened. A week had passed since HOA Queen's little stunt with the city inspector, and I had almost convinced myself that maybe, just maybe, she'd finally backed off. Maybe she'd found a new hobby, like harassing a different neighbor about their lawn decor, or arguing with a grocery store cashier over expired coupons. I was wrong. I was so wrong. It started with a phone call from my friend, Jake, who worked at the county records office. "Dude," he said, his voice dripping with concern, "you might want to come down here." My stomach dropped. "Why?" "Because," he sighed, "someone just filed an annexation request for your property." I blinked. "A what?" "An annexation request. HOAs, trying to get your farm reclassified as part of their jurisdiction." I nearly dropped my phone. "That's not even possible." "It is if they claim your land is connected to HOA-controlled areas and should fall under their governance." I gritted my teeth so hard I was surprised my molars didn't crack. That woman wasn't just trying to harass me, she was trying to take my land. "Who filed it?" I growled. Jake hesitated. "The request was submitted by a residential committee." "But yeah, we both know exactly who's behind it." I was out the door before he could finish. The county office was a maze of bureaucracy, but I stormed through it with the determination of a man whose entire existence had just been personally insulted. When I finally got my hands on the paperwork, I wasn't surprised at all. There it was, clear as day, a petition, signed by a handful of HOA members, claiming that my land had always been a natural extension of the community and should fall under HOA's rules and regulations. My favorite part? The attached list of improvements they proposed. Public walking trails, a community event space, a dog park. Even though the closest HOA property didn't even allow pets, they were literally planning my farm's future, as if they already owned it. And the cherry on top, a note at the bottom, stating that the current landowner, me, was expected to begin compliance with HOA fees upon annexation approval. I stared at the paper, hands shaking with rage. They were planning to charge me to use my own land. That's when I decided I wasn't just going to fight back. I was going to destroy them. First, I called a lawyer. Then, I called the local news. By the time I arrived at the next HOA meeting, I wasn't alone. I walked into their pristine little clubhouse with 3 things. 1. A cease and desist order, signed by my lawyer, legally prohibiting them from taking any further action regarding my land. 2. A county official, who was more than happy to explain why their annexation attempt was legally impossible. 3. A journalist, who had been very interested in hearing about the HOA's attempt at a land grab. HOA Queen's face went from smug to horrified in less than 3 seconds. "This is a private meeting," she shrieked when she saw the reporter's camera. "You can't just barge in here." "Neither can you," I said coolly, slapping the legal notice onto the table. "Consider this my formal response to your annexation request." The county official cleared his throat. "Ma'am, I'm here to inform you that your petition is legally invalid. The farm in question is privately owned and is not connected to HOA property in any way that would warrant annexation." Her eyes darted around the room, looking for support, but the other HOA members were visibly sweating. A few had the good sense to shrink in their seats. That's not true," she stammered. We have community interest. It's beneficial to the neighborhood." The county official shrugged. "Doesn't matter. You have no legal claim." The journalist scribbled notes furiously, as HOA Queen's world started crumbling. "You can't just come in here and humiliate me," she hissed, barely keeping her composure. "Oh, I'm not done yet," I said, pulling out one final document. I grinned as I slid it across the table. A petition, one I had put together after visiting every homeowner in the neighborhood who had been sick and tired of HOAs. Nonsense. A petition demanding a vote to remove HOA Queen from her position. Her jaw dropped. You can't. The community," I said, using her own words against her, "has concerns about your leadership." Several HOA members looked away, avoiding her gaze. Some nodded. And then, the final nail in the coffin, one of her own board members cleared his throat and muttered, "Maybe we should hold a vote." That was it. The moment she realized she had lost. Her face turned a shade of red I didn't think was humanly possible. "This isn't over," she whispered, voice shaking. "Oh, it is," I said, "and I'm looking forward to your replacement." The journalist snapped a photo just as she stormed out. Her clipboard clutched like a lifeline, her reign of terror officially crumbling around her. As I walked out, I let myself enjoy the moment, the sweet, sweet taste of victory. HOA Queen had tried to take my land. Instead, she lost her crown. For the first time in weeks, my land was quiet. No unsolicited visits. No clipboard-wielding zealots. No self-righteous HOA Queen standing at my gate, barking orders like she was some kind of suburban warlord. Just the wind rustling through my crops, the steady hum of the tractor, and the sweet, satisfying knowledge that I had won, and she had lost. The fallout from the HOA meeting had been glorious. Once the motion to remove her had been set in motion, it was like watching a dam burst. Homeowners who had never dared to speak up before suddenly found their voices. Stories poured out excessive fines, backdoor deals, ridiculous restrictions enforced with an iron fist. Turns out, a lot of people had been waiting for their chance to take her down, and I had given it to them. Within a week, the HOA board held an emergency election. By a landslide, she was voted out. And just like that, her reign was over. She must have thought she could salvage her pride, because the next time I saw her, she was standing by her car, glaring at me from across the road. She didn't yell. She didn't demand. She just stood there, seething, watching me work my land like she was trying to set it on fire with sheer hatred alone. I didn't even acknowledge her. She wasn't worth the effort. A few days later, a for sale sign appeared in front of her house. I'd be lying if I said I didn't smirk when I saw it. Word around the neighborhood was that after her spectacular downfall, she had tried to rally support to reclaim her throne. It didn't work. Without the power trip, without the constant control, she had nothing left. And when that realization sank in, she did what all Karens do when they don't get their way. She ran. The new HOA president? A guy named Mark. Chill dude, reasonable, and best of all, he doesn't give a single damn about my farm. Just keep doing what you're doing, he told me with a shrug. Honestly, I'm just here to make sure nobody's house catches fire. I could live with that. So here I was, standing on my land, breathing in the crisp morning air, finally free of the nonsense that had plagued me for months. HOA queen had tried to take my farm. Instead, she lost everything. And me? I was still right here, right where I belonged,